Bear down, Chicago Bears. The market for Justin Fields continues to be a very weird thing. And we got a report that there's been a change and that things have shifted and why they shifted, where that leads us. And what we're going to do today is we're going to look at that report. Then we're going to look at the report about the trade market for Justin Fields. Then we're going to look at the offense and the defense. And we'll do this quickly as possible to get you out of here. Cam, if you like this type of content, please make sure that you hit the like button, subscribe button, and the bell to be notified of future content. And we're going to start this off with this. This report came out. The Chicago Bears have shifted on Caleb Williams at the combine and want a Super Bowl in the immediate future. Super Bowl being the operative, important part to this. And this article says that the Bears have a chance to draft Caleb Williams with the number one pick that they own, courtesy of the Carolina Panthers. They went into Indianapolis hoping to learn more about the quarterback prospect before they decided to whether to draft one this year or keep Justin Fields as their franchise guy. Apparently the Bears were very interested in Caleb before the combine. After the combine, and Caleb Williams, in their minds, based on the information, the interactions, what he can do on film for them is spurring a lot of excitement around the league and those that are in the building of Chicago, knowing he's good. In fact, I would even say their thought of Caleb Williams headed into Indy versus when they left shifted even more positively. Rossini said that the Bears, they have the infrastructure with their roster and staff for a quarterback like Williams to take them to a Super Bowl in the next few years. Now, that's not true. There is a possibility of the Bears making a playoff. And look, once you get into the playoffs, it is wild what could happen with your team. But we're going to look at the roster in just a few moments and we're going to kind of break down like, do you agree that this is a Super Bowl winning team? I'm going to show you their rosters and you will know at the end of this whether or not that is the case. Is this that type of team? But let's take one more glance at something else here before we get started on that. And we're going to look at this. The Bears are being patient in the Justin Fields trade market, and I think they should stick with Justin Fields. Now, I'm going to explain why. First of all, they're being patient in the market because they didn't find any market that they were hoping for Fields. So as of right now, they're waiting to see what happens with Kirk Cousins, with Baker Mayfield, with a bunch of draft picks. Most teams right now don't want to pick up the fifth-year option on Justin Fields. They see him like a one-year rental. So it would be along the lines of if you were going with a player like Sam Darnold, Drew Lock, somebody like that, who's only going to be around for 1 year, because then somebody's going to have to pay Justin Fields $25 million as a fifth-year option. Maybe franchise tag, if that is the case. If not, they have to sign him to a longer term deal. And at this point, the question remains: like, is he going to get 35 to 45 million, which is the number that he most probably is going to want? So, that leads to some speculation, some of the reasons why people are a little reticent and nervous about Justin Fields in the long term. If you move on to Caleb Williams today, it's $9 million ish per year for the next 4 years. If you stick with Justin Fields, it's $6 million this year, but it's $25 million next year, $40 million the year after that. That becomes a lot of capital that you're putting into. And like, who are you? Kansas City Chiefs, who just paid a record amount of money to a defensive tackle and a record amount of money to a quarterback. Well, so it can be done that way, which I think is the point that I was trying to make while I just kind of threw that out there. But let's look at the facts. There's not a good market for Justin Fields. There's still questions concerning Caleb Williams. Now, here's the thing. If you are in the business of creating and crafting narratives like Adam Schefter will sometimes get information about things happening in the market. He certainly does, but he's also responsible for crafting a lot of narratives. And there are a lot of those being done. And the narrative right now is that the Bears are definitely moving on to Caleb Williams and that there's no chance for Justin Fields in Chicago, but there's a market. And originally it was a second round pick. Then it was a third round pick. Now nobody's interested. Things are changing dramatically. Now, over the course of this, let's call it 48 hours, because the narrative has shifted slightly in 48 hours. Suddenly, what is old has become new again, and people are now going back to their mock drafts as free agency opens tomorrow, and they're saying, hey, you know what? Maybe the Bears would keep Justin Fields in this sort of scenario. So I'm going to show you now what the Chicago Bears look like for draft picks. So as you can see, the draft picks right now, you have the number 1 overall, which you got from Carolina. You got the number 9 overall. Then you've got the number 75, which means you're going deep into the 3rd round before you get another pick. And then you go 2 picks in the 4th round. And the question to you would be, can you build a team, especially if you just reserve that number 1 overall for Caleb Williams? If you do that, what do you do next with that 9 selection? If you draft Caleb Williams, you have to have receivers. Do you currently have receivers on the roster that would enhance and quote unquote, as the report said, take you to the Super Bowl with Caleb Williams? And the answer, if anybody here is saying yes, they're being disingenuous to you. They're not being truthful to you. There's no chance without at least a good receiver coming in at that position of the Z receiver that you're going to the Super Bowl. There's just no way. The offense is not good enough. Now, some of you might be able to say, well, yeah, it's just because of Justin Fields. And look, fair enough. You're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to your facts. And you can dislike the fact that Justin Fields held on to the ball for a longer period of time than was arguably necessary. But Justin Fields doesn't call the plays. Justin Fields goes out there to execute plays. And when they're poorly scripted plays or they're poorly designed plays, then the result is a poor performance. And we had plenty of poor performance. And again, I go back to some of that is and look, Justin Fields has some accountability for it, but some of that is also the responsibility of the offensive coordinator to create winning situations and to recognize his team. And look, you got 2 different people. You got a coach who will play and try to get the most out of his players and try to work his magic around what they're capable of. And then you have another guy who will just say, "This is the way we're doing it, and you guys better come along for the ride." And neither one of them is better than the other. You would like to think that the first option is the best, but it's not always the case. However, Luke Getsy was number 2, and he was a number 2. And it didn't work out that well. It didn't go the way that we wanted it. So, what does that look like? Well, that means that coming up, we have to fill gaps that were created on this team by not getting the most out of players when there was an opportunity. Darnell Mooney is probably moving on. So we're stuck. I'm going to show you what the Bears roster it kind of looks like. And we're going to look at offense and we're going to look at defense. And you may disagree with me just a little bit on these, but I'm trying to be as specific as I can about you have 5 draft picks. You have these 5 draft picks that you have to fill this roster out with, and you have free agency, and you don't have a whole lot of money to do it with. So you have to be asking the honest question here about, what do you do? Well, let's start off with the salary cap. You have $63 million in salary cap space. You're gonna keep 10 million because you need that for the season in case somebody gets injured. You have to have about $10 million. It's reasonable. The Bears took $10 million into last offseason, ended up with 4.9 million left over. So that does mean that they're going to probably take another 10. Maybe they could get by with 6 or 7, but they're probably going to take 10. So that leaves 53 million. Now you've also got a draft class. If you just assume the 1 and the 9 pick, then that's about 15, 16 million in that range. Maybe 14 million, and then you've got a couple of other guys. So you're going to want 20 million there minimum. So let's take 30 million off of this. You got $33 million left, realistically speaking, or let's call it 40 million, just to say we got a cheap roster. We only got 5 picks. It's going to be $13 million, $14 million maybe. But let's just say we got $38 million. Who are you going to get? How you going to build a roster that's going to get you to the Super Bowl with that type of money? Now, the question and the answer to this question is the draft. That's how you're going to do it. But the way that you accomplish that is going to be interesting because now you have to consider what positions do you have of need. Well, let's pull that up. So the positions of need right now, when you look at this roster and when you kind of break this down, you need a center. You've got DJ Moore at wide receiver 1. For the offensive line, you've got Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, Nate Davis, and Darnell Wright, but you don't have a center. Right now, you have Ryan Bates as your center. But then at slot right, you don't have anybody in the slot. You don't have anybody at the Z wide receiver, which is wide receiver two position. Then I put up a question mark at Justin Fields for quarterback. So in the event that you want to do something and you want to make this team better, first of all, is this your Super Bowl team? Cole Kmet at tight end, Khalil Herbert at running back. Look, I think the potential exists for this to happen. However, the only way that this happens is if you start to fill in some of these spots, right? Well, are you going to go out and get Jackson Powers Johnson? Uh, Maybe, you could maybe pick him up in the draft, but if not, then now you're talking about Lloyd Cushenberry, or you're talking about Aaron Brewer, or you're talking about Connor Williams. You're talking about putting a lot of money into that center position. Let's call it at least 10 million to $12 million if you're going to do that. Now that leaves a lot less than you would like, and we're not done yet, by the way. So you've also got the slot wide receiver position, and you've got the Z wide receiver position that you're going to have to fill. And the question is, can you do that? And how are you going to do that? And most importantly, how much money does it cost in order to make that happen? And that becomes a very interesting question and a very difficult sort of narrative. So now let's take a moment here and look at the defense. The defense is also filled with questions. You've got to fill the defensive tackle position. Now, when I originally drew this up, the first person that I put into that position was Gervon Dexter. So, what my ideal situation here was going to be Montez Sweat, Gervon Dexter, Andrew Billings. And I'm a big Gervon Dexter fan, so I do think that he fits in very nicely, but we're not there yet. When I made this, it was last night before Chris Jones ended up in Kansas City, and I kept it open just for the purpose of just in case we're looking at that sort of situation. However, if we want a solid defensive tackle, it's going to cost money. If we want a backup defensive tackle, it's probably going to cost money. And then we still need an edge rusher. Montez Sweat, we paid $25 million for. In order to get an effective edge rusher, it's probably going to cost between 10 and 15 million. Now, we could go cheap and we could go through the draft, but we don't have the draft capital and we don't have the draft picks to do that. So you have to do it through free agency. Next up, we signed Tarvarius Moore at free safety. Now, the cornerback position, Jalen Johnson and Tyreek Stevenson seems to be in pretty good shape, especially with with Terrell Davis and Kyler Gordon as their backups. I mean, that seems to be a really solid foundation. And Jaquan Brisker, you can make an argument there that strong safety is really taken care of. It's that free safety position that Eddie Jackson used to occupy. Now, Tarvarius Moore is a backup to that position. He's not a starter to that position. He doesn't enhance and make this team better. Not better than Eddie Jackson. We're moving for an upgrade to Eddie Jackson because at $18 million, it was cost prohibitive. And then at your Sam position, you have Jack Sanborn. At the Mike, you have Tremaine Edmonds, and at the Will, you have TJ Edwards. So that's your linebacking core, and I think that that's a pretty solid linebacking core. But we still have defensive tackle, edge, and free safety. Now, any one of those positions right there for a solid player is $10 million. So if you grant me that we have this, which is going to take a center $8 to $10 million, wide receiver two $8 to $10 million, defensive tackle $8 to $10 million, edge rusher $8 to $10 million, free safety $8 to $10 million. If you just grant me that those are the possibilities, then the Chicago Bears have no money and they're already over their budget just to get to this situation. Now, there are some creative methods by which this could all be fixed. I'm sure there are ways by which, there are ways by which we could maybe come up with some sort of creative way. But the most creative way, the one that makes the most sense, is to do it by the draft. So, what I'm going to do right now, and I hope you appreciate this, guys, I'm going to take you through a draft. And as we go through that draft, I'm just going to kind of give you, um, I'm going to try to fill in and I'm going to try to kind of fix the roster positions that we're looking for with very little impact. And I will, for the record, be using Justin Fields as the quarterback to go forward. Now, that might for you be a deal breaker, but I think Justin Fields still represents the best opportunity for the Bears to win. And then I'm going to show you why as we go through this draft. All right, guys, if you're interested in this, is profootballnetwork.com/mock draft. We're going to choose 7 rounds. We're going fast, and we're going to enter the draft with the first overall pick. Now, that does mean that I'm in the Caleb Williams draft lottery. And there are rumors going around right now that the Atlanta Falcons have made a pitch for the number one pick. Again, these are just rumors at this point, but let's reject Denver. We're going to leave Washington. We're going to reject Minnesota, and we're going to go see what could we get at Atlanta. Well, with Atlanta, and this is, I'm just spitballing here, guys. This is not what we want to do, but I'm just going to spitball here to try to create a situation in which, and by the way, if Caleb Williams off the table and I'm not trading that number two down, Atlanta still needs that quarterback, right? And um, on the fence here. I'm going to reject the Raiders. So what I'm going to have left here are three offers. The first offer is pick number 2, 36, 40, and 67, and a 2025 first round pick for Washington. I want to win now. Then I have the number 8, 43, 74, and then Atlanta's first and second round picks in 2025. And then for New England, I have 3, 34, 68, the New England first and second for next year. Now, I prefer, by the way, this Washington move. So we're going to accept that Washington move that gets me the pieces that I've got now in place. And here is where I'm going to quote unquote risk it for the biscuit, if you will. I'm going to trade my 2 and 67 for a 4, 27, and 35. I'm going to accept that trade. So now Marvin Harrison is off my table. I'm going to stop right there. I now have the 4 pick. I've lost Marvin Harrison. Now, I don't like the fact that I've lost Marvin Harrison. However, I'm not out of position here. What are the positions? What are the situations? What do I need in order to make this team elite? And the question for that can be answered with, do I need a Joe Alt? Because now I'm in a very different situation. I'm not addressing one of the pieces that I need, but I am addressing one of the potential pieces that can make this team better. So the question I'm going to ask myself is, do I want Joe Alt or do I want Olu Fashanu? I'm going to take Joe Alt. I'm going to take Joe Alt, and we're going to see what happens because I've got a number 4, I've got a number 9, and let's see what's available at number 9. So at number 9, I'm going to reject these trades right here. Now I'm going to see what I can do about, here we go, Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors is available to me at number 9. Now, this did not address everything that I needed, but I did get an offensive tackle of the future, Braxton Jones. This is a replacement for Braxton Jones. We know that, but now we've got Malik Neighbors in that Z formation and position. Now at number, this is the next move here because we've moved down, because we've got into this position at number 27. We have some opportunity to pick up a little bit more draft capital. So we're going to take the best, maybe second best, but for most people, the best defensive tackle right now, and his name is Johnny Newton. We're going to take him at number 27, and he was a top 20 guy. So that's out of the way, and now we've got a couple of picks here coming through the second round, and number 35 here, we're going to go with, we need an edge rusher. The guy I keep telling you guys that I want, Darius Robinson out of Missouri. He's available at that position. We're going to take that. And then what are the other positions that we need? We need a center, right? Zach Frazier is available at number 45, the second best center available in this draft. Boom, taken care of. Now at number 40, what are we doing? At number 40, what do I need here? At this point, I still need some slot receivers, but now I've freed up some payroll, okay? I just want to point out here that what we've done is we've freed up. We've got the wide receiver that we want, the wide receiver of the future. We've got the defensive tackle, who I think is the future. We've got Darius Robinson, the edge rusher, who I think, if not the future, is at least an upgrade over Dominique Robinson, who's an upgrade over DeMarcus Walker, who's potentially got some more upside than some of these other guys. And then we've got Zach Frazier. So we do have our center of the future. So, now the question is, I need a free safety. I need some depth, right? So now let's go with, in this draft, we're going to come back over here. We're going to take Leonard Taylor because we need some depth at defensive tackle. So he's the most willing available party at that position. So we're going to take that. Moving down into the number 75 position here. Now we've got Cole Bishop available. We've got Braden Fisk available. We've got Javon Bullard coming out of Georgia. We're going to take Javon Bullard as our safety prospect. So we're going to pop that in there. At the number 109 position, We are going for Audric Esteem because we need a backup running back. Now we need a wide receiver. We're going to reach in here. We're going to get Jamari Thrash out of Louisville. All right, guys, now we finished off our draft, and here are the results. We were able to grab Joe Alt as our offensive tackle of the future. Line is fixed. We've got Malik Neighbors, a game-changing, some would say as good almost as Marvin Harrison Jr., and our wide receiver position. We got Johnny Newton, considered by many to be the best defensive tackle available in the draft by just moving down a little bit here. We didn't even move down from the 9 because we took Malik Neighbors, but we also got Darius Robinson at the 35 position. That's the edge rusher of the future that we really needed. We got number 36, Zach Frazier, offensive center out of West Virginia. We got another defensive tackle in Leonard Taylor at number 75. Early in the third round, we got Javon Bullard, who Tarvarius Moore could start this season, but then Javon Bullard moves in and takes over. We got Audric Estime, which is a decent enough running back as a backup at this point. Remember, we've got Khalil Herbert, we got Roshan Johnson, Travis Homer probably off the roster. Audric becomes our third guy. And then at number 121, we've got Jamari Thrash out of Louisville. Jamari Thrash may not even see playing time or ends up on the practice squad with Colin Johnson or somebody like that. But he is a potential threat, and I think he's an under the radar sort of guy. Now, 6 foot, 180 pounds. He's a little bit light for the NFL. Slot receiver, creating space and getting open is his forte. He should be a good guy, and he goes up and he gets the ball. Now, at the end of the season, he was injured for the University of Louisville Cardinals and was not making the catches that he was making at the beginning of the year, but that was because of an injury. So if you go back and you watch the tape, you'll see a much different guy from the first half of the season to the second half of the season. So that's it, guys. What I just did is fixed the Chicago Bears. We now have Joe Alt at offensive tackle, Malik Neighbors as our wide receiver. And again, I did this based on the fact that I'm not stuck on Caleb Williams. I'm not stuck on Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm trying to make the best I can out of this draft in order to satisfy as many potential positions as I can, while at the same time remembering the foundation of whom it is that I need at every single position. So let me go back here and look at this. We filled the center position with Zach Frazier. We filled the wide receiver position with Malik Neighbors, and let's call it Jamari Thrash. Now we'll get a slot receiver in free agency, or they may already be on the roster with Tyler Scott at this point, who will probably continue to approve, although it would be safe to say that he probably didn't set the world on fire in his first season. Probably left a little on the table, a little bit left to be desired. But Audric Estime is going to be the running back backup. So we've got that roster kind of filled out. The question mark I put next to Justin Fields was because we don't know what he's going to be in the future. This is just for the right now. Moving on to the defensive side of the roster, defensive tackle, we took Johnny Newton. Then we took a backup in Leonard Taylor. I think now we have a very strong defensive tackle squad. And then we have our edge rusher in Darius Robinson. That will allow us to get rid of, say, Dominique Robinson or DeMarcus Walker, maybe even free up some payroll in that regard. And then at free safety, we now have Javon Bullard. Now, Javon Bullard, he's a early third round pick, seems to be pretty good. Probably a learning curve on that. We do have to be honest, but Tarvarius Moore is in there in order to try to help out and improve the overall results in that position. And at the end of this, we got a 2025 first round pick for Washington, which might in fact end up being one of the top overall picks. And if that is the case, then we're about to get another elite talent in the next draft. So could that person be a quarterback if it doesn't work out with Justin Fields? It absolutely could. So, but guys, let me know what you think here. I'm trying to lay out all of the reasons so that going with Caleb Williams does not make a Super Bowl contender. Going with Caleb Williams does not make the Chicago Bears an elite team. Not at quarterback, not anywhere. Sticking with Justin Fields, because, by the way, the paradigm, the cheat code, remember, this is the cheat code. The cheat code in the NFL is an elite defense and a rookie quarterback, right? Justin Fields in his fourth year, $6 million, which means he's got 3 years of experience in the NFL. If not in this current offensive system, but in the NFL, he's got 3 seasons of experience. He knows the tendencies of a lot of players. He's going to have less of a curve than other people. But what we just did is we shored up the defensive tackle position. We got Johnny Newton, we got Leonard Taylor, we got Darius Robinson, we got Javon Buller. We actually created a much stronger defense by virtue of going through the draft in order to get it. Then we had the offense. The offense had problems. Some people, I like Braxton Jones, but I realize that Braxton Jones does have some downside to him. So Joe Alt is now the number 4 guy. That's the offensive tackle. So we've covered that position. Then we covered Malik Neighbors. Then we covered our slot receiver in Jamari Thrash. And then we covered our need for a third receiver or a third running back in Audric Estem. And then we also reached out and we got the second best center available in this draft, which was Zach Frazier. So we've basically accomplished everything that we wanted to coming in the draft almost exclusively. Now you can go out and you can get players who are able to be fit in at a much cheaper price to start this season so that some of these guys can work their way into the starting lineup very, very quickly. And this becomes a much better team. This is just my opinion, guys. I want to know what you think. Leave it down in the comment section down below. Hit the like button, the subscribe button, the bell to be notified of future content. And thank you very much for tuning in. And bear down. We'll talk to you again